to improve something in your life that you want and stop overcomplicating the situation because you're thinking 50 steps ahead. Pick one thing and pick your first step. That is it. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast, the Elevated Women's Club. I am so excited to have you here today. If you are new, thank you for joining. And if you have been here before, then you already know that we have a good topic for today. And it's something that we all need to hear, something that we all forget about on a daily basis as we go through life. And that is overcomplication is keeping you stuck. And let me start off by saying that I am a formerly overcomplicated person. I was always trying to pretty much do the most. So this is no judgment on this podcast. This is simply as I go through things, as I learn about them, I try to share them with others. That way they don't make the hard mistakes that I made throughout my process. And that way they can get to their end goal a lot quicker than I did. And we're going to look at it from a lens of like when you overcomplicate things, you're not only just keeping yourself stuck, but you may also be experiencing some failure within your life, right? Like some point in your life, you experienced something that you just felt like this was your destiny. Like this is what you were meant to do. This is what you were meant to achieve. And when you didn't achieve it, why was that? Maybe it's because we overcomplicated it, and I'm going to give you some examples. Maybe not, but I know that when we want something really bad, or when we see someone else that has something that we want, it can lead us to try to emulate or try to use them as a blueprint and try to do things that may not be in a way that would work for you. Maybe it worked for them, maybe it doesn't work for you, right? But you want a step-by-step formula to execute on something, to kind of be more like someone that has something you want, and you don't even realize that you might be overcomplicating the entire situation. So that's what we're going to look at from a biblical perspective too, because I want to show you some text and a revelation I had when I was reading a passage in the Bible, and I know I needed to share it because this was very eye-opening for me a few months ago, and I've really just trying to like carry this into my day-to-day life of like anything I set my mind on, anything I want to do, anything that comes up for me, I'm like, okay, what is the easiest way possible that I can accomplish this? That is my new goal. I don't want to overcomplicate it. I don't want to turn one step into 10 steps. This is what we're going to look at when we read this passage in the Bible in just a minute. So let me start off by saying that I was reading the Bible just like any other old book I would read. And I quickly learned that that is not how you're supposed to read it, right? But we do this so much with everything that we read, not realizing that when you get a book, it's usually a collection of someone's thoughts and years of experience summed up into 200 to 500 pages, right? Like there's a lot of knowledge, there's a lot of information, a lot of experience that goes behind a person who's creating a book that's meant to teach someone something. So when you're reading the Bible, realizing the same thing is happening there, right? Like that has lessons, principles, precepts, things that you can take away from it and actually apply to your life. So I would like to say that Myron Golden is an amazing creator that I learned this from, right? Not just reading the Bible like you would any old book, because he actually teaches entrepreneurs how to be entrepreneurs and how to be financially successful from a biblical perspective. So absolutely check him out. But he does it because he dissects all of the things in the Bible that it is trying to teach us. And so when I went through this passage, I kind of did the same thing. And I asked, God to show me what was trying to be said in these two verses that I'm going to share with you. So it was impactful. It was a lot. And the Bible will quickly show you that if you lean into your own thoughts and your own understanding on what you think something means, you can quickly get into trouble, right? And so I think when people do read anything, doesn't have to be the Bible, just anything, start looking for the deeper meaning, because I promise you there is one. It's not all surface level text. It is actually trying to show you something. All you got to do is think a little bit. Like someone can't sum up 40 years. Let's just say somebody wrote a book and they're trying to take their 40 years of experience and condense it into 500 pages. it's almost impossible. There's so much that goes into it. So they have to cut corners, cut things short. They have to let the person figure out what lesson they are trying to teach them in that chapter or that sentence or verse, whatever it may be. Just start reading a little bit more detailed, because I promise you, you will learn so much more if you just take your time, analyze, think, write down, and use your knowledge, your brain, to determine what this is trying to tell you and what may be applicable to your life. So let me give you a little bit of backstory before we get into it. This was a story in the Bible where the Syrians were going to fight the Israelites in Samaria. And it was complete shock because the Israelites won the first battle. And it wasn't supposed to happen because the Syrians greatly outnumbered the Israelites already. So what the Syrians thought they were going to do was win the second battle. They were going to go home, come back in a few months. They were going to try to fight the Israelites again. And they thought they had a foolproof plan on how this was going to happen. And they were going to win and overtake the Israelites. That was the plan. Second battle, they also lost, okay? And I will show you the revelation I had with this, because it showed me when you lean into your own understanding, you create narratives in your mind that are not true, and you think you have a solution, but you've just overcomplicated the entire thing. You haven't asked for help. You haven't asked or prayed to God. You haven't asked a family member or a friend what you should do. You haven't thought about it. You just start acting. This showed me that they completely overcomplicated it. They lost, and then they were still questioning why they lost, because it didn't make sense. It did not. But it shows me the power of overcomplication, like how that will take you out every time. So let me read you the text. Okay, listen carefully because you may miss it, but I will read it, and I'll read it slowly. This is 1 Kings chapter 20, verse 23 through 25. Their gods are gods of the hills. Therefore, they are stronger than we. But if we fight against them in the plain, surely we will be stronger than they. This is what the servants of the king of Samaria told him when they were about to go fight the second battle with the Israelites. Okay, so they assumed that there was a god of the hills or a god of the plains, or they just assumed that the Israelites had a god that helped them because he was a god of the hills. So automatically, that's an assumption. You don't know that, okay? So you just started off overcomplicating the thing. And so surely if we fight them in the plains, we will surely be stronger than they. Again, you've just thought that, and that's an assumption that you made. You don't know that for sure. So you've let people misguide you, mislead you, overcomplicated the situation, and now you're expecting an outcome from that is likely not going to happen. And so again, we do this every day, myself included. Who told you there was a God of the hills? Who told you there was a God of the plains? Who told you there was a God for everything? No one told you that. So you've assumed something that wasn't true, and now you're expecting an outcome that's going to probably be totally different than what you anticipated. But we do this every day because we make clothes our God. We make houses our God. We make cars and money our God. You think you don't do this, but we do have things that we idolize, that we worship, that we want. And there's nothing wrong with that. I did another video on this, right? But you're creating something in your mind that is telling you like, this is more important and this is what I need to strive for. How now do I get that house or that car or that money that this person has that I may slightly be envious of? Not realizing that they've been working 15, 20 years to achieve this, or even 5. Like, how do I get that today? So now I have to burn myself out. I have to work extra hard. I have to release videos and content and things that are not my gift. I have to self-sabotage and just throw myself off a cliff almost in order to get something done that wasn't likely even meant for me, because I prioritized something ahead of when I was actually supposed to get it, or maybe it's not even something that I actually need. I just want it. So I hope that was a roundabout way of showing you that the overcomplication comes from the assumption. Okay. They thought that they had different gods for different things. You assume something. Now, how do we win this battle? Oh, wait, it's because they have a God that doesn't exist, but we are going to challenge them and we're going to be smarter than them and we are going to fight on a different place. That way their God cannot help them. So you've assumed something. You've assumed something. Your mind has gone off. You've decided to pursue that business or pursue that passion or pursue that money, pursue that house, car, those clothes. And you've decided to say, okay, what can I do to get this? Okay, yeah, I can work 15 hours. I can create content about something I don't care about. I can work 12 hours at a job that I hate. I can work overtime. I can, whatever it is. And that's fine. Nothing wrong with it. But is that really what you want? Is that really your thought? Like, do you even really want these things? Or are you just assuming that's what you want? Like, you have to get more granular and understand that when you overcomplicate things or when you want 50 things as opposed to just focusing on one thing, that you're going to get confused. You're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to likely get stuck and potentially fail, unfortunately, which is what the Syrians did when they tried to fight the Israelites because they weren't prepared. They weren't ready. They were leaning into their own understanding, making assumptions on things that were not true. And then they use those assumptions to try to win a battle that they were never going to win in the first place. So, how do you stop this overcomplication? And it's going to sound easy, but it's not. What you got to do first is just stop. You got to stop. You got to take a breath. I know it's going to be difficult because we're always on go mode. Everything's go, go, go. No, you're going to stop. And you're absolutely going to stop making assumptions on how you achieve it. It is one of the biggest mistakes that I have made, that I'm sure people watching this have made. You assume that you know what it takes to get something you want, but you really don't know because you don't have it yet. So stop assuming that you know what it's going to take to get that thing that you want. What you're going to do is think about one thing that you want, and you're going to determine what the first action is that you need to take. And that's it. You're not thinking about 15 years from now, what your life is going to look like when you have it. I know it's hard. I promise. I know. Everybody tells you have to have goals, you have to have dreams. That's great. But don't get so overwhelmed with your goals and dreams that you set yourself up for failure because you think you know what it takes and you think you know what your life is going to look like. And when it doesn't look like that, you don't want it anymore. So it's going to be difficult. And because you're going to have to release control in order to actually get what you want. If you want, let's say, a promotion at work, do not lean into your own understanding, thinking that you know what it takes to get a promotion at your job, and then you start working 14 hours a day because you want to show everybody how hard you work every single day, and then eventually burn yourself out to where you're no good to anyone and yourself. The first step is, you want a promotion. Okay? I want a promotion. I want more money. I want more responsibility. What's the first action you can take to get that promotion? How about you just set up a meeting with your boss and you have a conversation and ask them, what would it take for me to get a promotion with what I'm currently doing? And I want a promotion a level or two above what I'm doing now. What would it take? Ask them that. That is step one. Another couple of examples. Let's say you are a beautiful, gorgeous woman going through this world, but you have not felt like the dating scene is going to your liking. Let's say your friends around you are getting married, they're having children. You feel like you're behind because you don't even have anyone that you would really consider dating at this point. That is okay. Just be a gorgeous woman and exist in life, but take a step back because right now you really don't want to be married with kids. All you want is to find a decent man to go on a date with. So how about we write out a list of non-negotiables? Like, what would it take for you to actually go on a date with a man, consider him for a second date? Because from what I hear from a lot of my friends is that when they go on these dates, someone says something crazy, they kind of let it slide, and then they go on a second date or a third, and then eventually doesn't work out. So as opposed to wasting any more of that time, how about you make a list of non-negotiables that is the second you hear something that you don't like out of that person's mouth, you're gone and you stop wasting your time. That would be a better first step as opposed to being depressed because you feel like you're behind, even though You know you're absolutely not. You're exactly where you need to be in this moment in life, okay? Last example I will give you is, let's say that your mental health is unfortunately really struggling, but you feel too overwhelmed to think about like what it would look like for you to actually repair your mental health. Like you feel like you don't even have time between work and maybe you have a family and kids and just a bunch of responsibilities. You're completely overwhelmed and you can't even think about fixing or correcting anything that's wrong with your mental health at this point. How about we take a step back? How about you just go to BetterHelp, which is like the easiest platform to book therapy services, and you just book an appointment. You fill out a small, short questionnaire and they give you a therapist in minutes. Like it could be that easy. Or maybe you just start journaling. Maybe you just start journaling some of the things that you want to work on and you start using shadow work prompts from Pinterest. I did a previous video. I'll link that in the cards below, but I think that there are a lot easier ways and things that we don't even think about are like our first step to take in order to fix something because we're already trying to plan 50 steps ahead. Why? Because that's what society and culture tells us to do, but that is not going to help us. Not going to help us. When you start thinking about how do I get a promotion that's going to pay me more money today, it's not realistic. You got to take a step back and see what needs to even happen for you to get that promotion. When you start thinking that you're behind in life and everybody's ahead of you and you want a husband and family and kids, also not realistic and not helpful to you or your mental health. You need to take a step back and decide what's going to be a good ideal first date and what is the guy's qualities going to be that I'm actually going to consider a second date being. And then when you think about your mental health, huge priority, top priority, I would say. What's the first step you can take? Go on an easy platform. They honestly couldn't have made it any easier on BetterHelp for you to go on there and book online therapy services. If you don't like the therapist, you can change them immediately. It's just one thing you can do to improve something in your life that you want and stop overcomplicating the situation because you're thinking 50 steps ahead. Pick one thing and pick your first step. That is it. And going off of that, I would say another thing you can do to remove the complication from everything that you do is to remove the expectation too. And I know it's going to be hard. Again, I just gave you a lot of examples. So you may want a promotion, but don't think that you're going to get it immediately. Just say, what's the first thing I need to do? And then take that first action. But so many of us put expectations on things and we don't even realize that we're doing it, but subconsciously our brain's just trying to keep us safe from anything new. So you think something like learning another language is difficult, so you don't even try. Think that your business is going to fail, so you don't even start it. You think that all your dates that you go on when you're dating are going to be horrible, so there's no one out there that can possibly satisfy your needs and just take you to dinner, so you don't even go. And that is the problem when you put an expectation on something. You're already expecting an outcome, so your actions are going to reflect that. You don't try, you don't go, you stop doing something that you liked doing because you've already made up in your mind that you know the outcome. And that could simply not be true. So by removing the expectation, you're just taking each day for what it is, which is just a new day to start again, to try something new and have a new experience. That's all every single day is. You do not have to make it more complicated than what it is. I will actually give you an example from my own life recently, and it's a small example, but I overcomplicated the crap out of something for months and months and months. And it was actually on my forgiveness journey. So I do have some family members that we currently are having some issues. And I told myself that I've already made up in my mind what the expectation and the outcome is. So I said, look, this is just not going to work for me. I'm removing myself from the situation. I already know how this is going to go. And I put an expectation on it. I already thought I knew the outcome. And then I put a stipulation on it. I said, I'm not going to forgive them unless they do X, Y, Z. And when I told my sister this a few months ago, she was like, okay, that's unrealistic. She told me, she corrected me, see, this is why you need good people in your life. She was like, you can't put an expectation on something like forgiveness because you're always going to be disappointed. It's not going to happen. And then you don't even communicate that to the person. You just assume that they know and live inside your head and know what you would want to make that situation better. So once I realized that, that was like a light bulb moment for me because I overcomplicated the whole thing. I'm like, yeah, forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for me, number one. So by letting go of all the resentment, the hostility, trust me, a lot of inner work went into this. It wasn't just that simple conversation. But when you let go of it, it's for you. So you have to remove the expectation from others. You have to remove the expectation from the outcome or the situation or the experience. Because when you overcomplicate it, you're just really going to be unhappy, honestly, because that's why it's called overcomplication for a reason. You are taking something that could be simple. If you would just ask yourself, like, okay, what's the simplest way I can get this done? You would think about it, meditate on it, sit with it. That would take you a lot less time than you trying to do 50 things to create one action, right? So when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I see what you're saying. I need to think about not just putting a stipulation on it, but just forgiving them because it's going to make me feel better, not them. They don't have to do anything to get my forgiveness. And by me removing that expectation off of them and myself, I was able to be freed up for a new, fresh, different perspective on what actual forgiveness is. So I do hope that this helped, ladies. I am so excited to share these things with you because overcomplication is something that everyone does. And if we could just reset and get back to basics, I know that we can all live a more purposeful, meaningful life. And we can actually complete the things that we want to complete out of life by, number one, just picking one thing and one action to go behind it, and then removing the expectation because there is none, right? You are just trying to complete whatever it is you desire, but you will not complete it if you already plan 50 steps ahead and think it's going to fail and you don't bring yourself back to reality and determine what the first action is that you can take. So again, I do hope that this helped. I am a coach on women's mental health and inner work. I am always doing inner work. If there are any questions you have, please leave a comment below and I will do my best to get back to you because I want us all to elevate. I want us all to get better and I want us all to think differently. So until next time.